My sister told me she was dying from kidney failure and needed my kidney to survive. I was already prepped for surgery when the doctor pulled me aside and said, "We need to talk about your sister's test results." I would have done anything for my sister. We grew up close, shared everything, protected each other. So when she told me she had kidney failure and needed a transplant, I didn't even hesitate. I said yes immediately, started the testing process to see if I was a match, prepared myself mentally and physically for major surgery. I was ready to give her my kidney and save her life, until the doctor told me something that made my blood run cold. My sister wasn't sick. She'd been lying about everything, and she almost stole my organ based on a fake diagnosis. My sister Rachel is 3 years younger than me. We had a normal sibling relationship growing up. Some fighting, but mostly we got along. After we both moved out and started our adult lives, we stayed close, talked on the phone regularly, met up for dinner. She was my best friend. Rachel always had a flair for drama. She liked being the center of attention. When we were kids, she'd exaggerate stories to make them more interesting. As an adult, she'd sometimes play up minor health issues to get sympathy. I never thought much of it, just figured she liked attention. Lots of people do. Then, about a year ago, Rachel called me crying, said she'd been to the doctor and gotten terrible news, that she had kidney disease, that her kidneys were failing and she'd need a transplant soon or she'd die. I was devastated. My little sister was dying. I asked what we could do, how we could help. She said she was on a transplant list, but the wait could be years, that her best chance was a living donor, someone in the family who matched and could give her a kidney. I immediately said I'd get tested. She tried to say no, said she couldn't ask me to do that, but I insisted. Told her family takes care of family, that I wasn't going to let her die waiting for a stranger's kidney when I could potentially save her myself. I went through all the preliminary testing, blood work, medical history, physical exams. Everything came back showing I was healthy enough to donate. Then came the compatibility testing to see if my kidney would be a match for Rachel. The results took a few weeks. During that time, Rachel seemed to get sicker. She'd call me crying about her symptoms, said she was tired all the time, that she couldn't eat, that she was scared she'd die before finding a donor. My whole family rallied around her. My parents were devastated. They'd call me asking about the test results, asking if I'd heard anything yet. The pressure was intense. Everyone was counting on me to be a match, to save Rachel's life. When the results finally came back, I was a match. Perfect compatibility. The transplant coordinator said we could move forward with surgery. I was relieved and terrified at the same time. Relieved that I could save my sister. Terrified of major surgery, but I didn't hesitate. I signed all the paperwork, scheduled the surgery date, started preparing for the donation. My family treated me like a hero. My parents kept thanking me. Rachel would cry and say she didn't deserve a sister like me, that she'd never be able to repay me for saving her life. I told her she didn't need to repay me. That's what family does. The surgery was scheduled for a Thursday morning. I'd spent weeks getting ready, taking time off work, making sure my apartment was set up for recovery, saying goodbye to friends in case something went wrong. You never know with major surgery. There's always risk. The night before the surgery, Rachel texted me, said she loved me, said no matter what happened, she was grateful for everything I'd done. I told her everything would be fine, that this time next week we'd both be recovering and she'd have a working kidney. She sent back a heart emoji. I showed up at the hospital at 6 in the morning, got changed into the surgical gown, met with the anesthesiologist, signed more paperwork. Rachel was in the room next to mine going through the same process. I could hear her talking to the nurses. She sounded scared but ready. Then about 30 minutes before we were supposed to go into surgery, my doctor came in. His face was serious. He closed the door behind him and sat down. He said we needed to talk before we proceeded, that something had come up during Rachel's final pre-surgery tests. My heart dropped. I thought maybe Rachel was too sick for the surgery, that her kidneys had deteriorated too much. But what he said next was so much worse. The doctor told me Rachel's kidney function was normal, completely normal, that according to her test results, there was nothing wrong with her kidneys at all, that she didn't need a transplant, that she'd never needed a transplant. I stared at him, asked if he was sure, if maybe there was a mistake with the tests. He said he'd run them twice, sent them to 2 different labs. The results were consistent. Rachel's kidneys were functioning perfectly. She wasn't sick. She'd been lying. I felt like I couldn't breathe, like the room was spinning. My sister had faked kidney failure, had convinced me and our entire family that she was dying, had let me go through months of testing and preparation, had almost let me undergo major surgery to donate an organ she didn't even need. The doctor said he'd already confronted Rachel about the test results, that she'd broken down and admitted she wasn't sick, that she'd forged medical documents to make it look like she had kidney disease, that she'd lied to everyone. He said the surgery was obviously cancelled, that he'd reported her to hospital administration for medical fraud. I walked out of that pre-op room still in my hospital gown, found Rachel's room. She was sitting on the bed crying. When she saw me, she tried to explain, tried to say she'd made a mistake, that she was sorry, that she hadn't meant for it to go this far. I asked how it could possibly go this far by accident. She didn't have an answer. I asked why. Why would she do this? She said she didn't know, that she'd started lying about being sick and then couldn't figure out how to stop, that everyone was giving her so much attention and support and she didn't want it to end. She'd faked a terminal illness for attention, let her family suffer thinking she was dying, let me prepare to donate an organ, all for attention. But she had been lying about this for years. Well, not years exactly, but she'd been lying for over a year. 12 months of pretending to be sick, of faking symptoms, of forging medical documents. That takes planning. That's not just an accident or a cry for help. That's calculated manipulation. I left the hospital without speaking to her again, went home and tried to process what had happened. My parents called within an hour, said Rachel had told them everything, that she was sorry, that she needed help. They asked if I'd talk to her. I said no. I said I never wanted to see her again. Over the next few days, I started digging into exactly what Rachel had done. I contacted her supposed doctors and found out she'd never been a patient there. The medical documents she'd shown the family were completely fabricated. She'd created fake lab results, fake doctor's notes, fake everything. She'd built an elaborate lie that convinced everyone she was dying. I had no idea the full extent of their betrayal, not just Rachel's, but my parents' willingness to pressure me into donating without ever verifying her claims. They'd never asked to see real medical records, never went to appointments with her, never questioned anything. They just believed her because she was their daughter. I found out Rachel had been posting about her fake illness on social media, getting sympathy and donations from people who thought they were helping a sick young woman. She'd raised over $10,000 through a GoFundMe claiming she needed help with medical expenses, all based on lies. I also discovered this wasn't the first time Rachel had lied about being sick. When she was in college, she'd told people she had mono and couldn't attend classes, used it as an excuse to skip exams. She'd told her employer a few years ago that she had chronic migraines and needed special accommodations. All lies. Rachel had a pattern of faking illness for personal gain, and nobody had ever called her out on it. When I showed them the evidence, everything changed. I compiled everything I'd found. The fake medical documents, the GoFundMe, the history of lying about health issues. I sent it all to my parents and told them they needed to accept who Rachel really was. A liar and a manipulator who almost cost me my health and possibly my life for attention. My parents finally understood the severity of what Rachel had done. They called her out, demanded she get psychiatric help, told her she needed to return all the money from the GoFundMe and apologize to everyone she'd lied to. Rachel refused at first, said she couldn't return the money because she'd already spent it. On what? Nobody knows. Clothes probably. Dinners out. Things that had nothing to do with medical expenses. My parents threatened to report her for fraud if she didn't make it right. She eventually set up a payment plan to return the donations. The hospital pressed charges for medical fraud, Rachel was arrested and charged with multiple counts including fraud and attempted theft. The attempted theft charge was for trying to obtain my kidney under false pretenses. She ended up pleading guilty to avoid trial and got 2 years probation, community service, and mandatory psychiatric treatment. Her mugshot was in the local news. The story made headlines. Woman fakes cancer to steal sister's kidney. People she knew saw it. Her employer saw it. She lost her job, lost most of her friends. Her reputation was completely destroyed. My parents apologized to me, said they should have been more careful, should have verified Rachel's claims before pressuring me to donate, should have protected me instead of enabling Rachel's lies. I appreciated the apology, but it didn't change what had happened. They'd chosen to believe Rachel without question, and I'd almost paid the price. I cut Rachel out of my life completely, blocked her number, blocked her on social media, told my parents I didn't want to hear about her. If they chose to maintain a relationship with her, that was their choice. But I was done. You don't come back from trying to steal someone's organ. Rachel tried to reach out a few times, sent letters to my apartment. I returned them unopened. She showed up at my work once. Security escorted her out. She sent messages through mutual friends. I ignored all of it. There was nothing she could say that would make what she did okay. The worst part wasn't even the physical danger she'd put me in. Major surgery has risks. I could have died, could have had complications, could have ended up with health problems of my own. But worse than that was the emotional betrayal. The fact that someone I loved and trusted had manipulated me so completely, had let me believe she was dying and used that to almost steal my organ. I went to therapy to process everything, to work through the trauma of being betrayed by family, of almost being medically assaulted by my own sister. My therapist helped me understand that what Rachel did wasn't my fault, that I couldn't have known, that trusting family isn't a weakness, but it taught me to verify, to ask questions, to not just accept things at face value, even from people I love. It's been 18 months since the canceled surgery, 18 months since I found out my sister had been lying about dying to manipulate me into giving her my kidney, and I'm okay now. It took time, a lot of therapy, a lot of processing, but I'm okay. My relationship with my parents is still strained. They enabled Rachel's behavior for years, never held her accountable for lying, always made excuses for her. They're trying to do better now, but the trust is damaged. I see them occasionally, but we're not as close as we used to be. Rachel finished her probation. From what I hear through the family grapevine, she's working some minimum wage job and living alone. She lost everything because of what she did. Her reputation, her career, her family, all for attention and sympathy she didn't deserve. I don't feel bad for her. What she did was evil. She didn't just lie. She tried to steal my organ. She put my health and potentially my life at risk for her own gain. That's not something you forgive. That's not something you move past. That's something you walk away from and never look back. What I learned from this experience is that some people are so desperate for attention that they'll hurt anyone to get it. That family doesn't automatically mean trustworthy. That you have the right to walk away from toxic people, even if you share DNA. And that doctors asking questions and verifying information can literally save your life. If that doctor hadn't run those final tests, I would have donated my kidney to someone who didn't need it. I would have undergone major surgery for nothing. I would have potentially dealt with lifelong health consequences, all because I trusted my sister and didn't question her story. Now I question everything, not in a paranoid way, just in a healthy way. When someone tells me something serious, I verify it. When someone asks for help, I make sure they really need it. I don't just hand over trust anymore. It has to be earned, and it can be lost forever. Rachel lost mine forever. She doesn't get another chance. She doesn't get forgiveness. She doesn't get to be in my life, pretending like she didn't almost steal my organ. Some betrayals are permanent. This is one of them. To anyone watching this who's being pressured by family to make a major sacrifice, here's my advice. Ask questions. Verify everything. Don't just trust because someone is family. Trust because they've earned it. And if something feels wrong, listen to that feeling. Your instincts exist for a reason. My instincts told me something was off about Rachel's story. The way she'd always loved drama. The way she'd exaggerated things in the past. But I ignored those instincts because she was my sister, because I thought family wouldn't lie about something this serious. I was wrong, and I almost paid for that mistake with my health. I'm sharing this story not for sympathy, but to warn people. Medical fraud happens. People fake illnesses for attention, for money, for organs. It's rare, but it happens. And if you're ever in a situation where someone is asking you to donate an organ or make any major medical sacrifice, make sure their condition is verified by independent doctors. Make sure everything is legitimate, because some people will lie about anything. Rachel faked having cancer to get my kidney. The doctor exposed her before she could go through with it. But if he hadn't, I'd be missing an organ right now, living with the consequences while Rachel enjoyed the attention and sympathy of being a transplant recipient. That's how close I came to being permanently harmed by someone I love. I'm grateful every day for that doctor who asked questions, who ran extra tests, who didn't just take Rachel's word for it. He saved my kidney, maybe even saved my life. And he exposed Rachel for what she really is, a liar who was willing to hurt her own sister for attention. That's who Rachel is, and I'll never forget it. Subscribe if you believe trust should be earned, not automatically given.